Hello, everyone. So many of you are following the Discovering Buddhism program, and we did the Module 1 assessment. We don't call it exam. So I finally had a chance to review everyone's answers, and I thought it would be a good forum to just give a few little talks. One about an overall sort of pep talk about how we are studying, how we pursue this study program, and then get into the various answers of the questions that were given, and sort of identify some of the things where there's still some confusion to fill some of the gaps in understanding. So first of all, of course, we do this like any other session, just adjusting our motivation, thinking that the purpose of my life is to benefit all sentient beings. And in order to benefit all sentient beings, I must achieve the state of enlightenment. And in order to achieve enlightenment, I need to learn about all the various causes, all the practices that lead to enlightenment. And therefore, I'm going to engage in this session here today. So we normally start all the teaching sessions like that. And it's just important to keep in mind this motivation with everything that we're doing. So, we say these words that we're studying, practicing, we're working for enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so now that we have this opportunity to engage in the Buddhist teachings, to study in depth, we should make the most of it. So actually in the Module 3 reading packet, there's a quotation that's given in the article by Geshe Zipa. And he says, Atisha says, the human lifespan is short, objects of knowledge are many, be like the swan, which can separate milk from water. So here, although we have this precious human rebirth, then our lifespan is very short. So in the time that we have remaining, we have to make sure that we're like the swan, okay, which can separate milk from water. So I'm not sure if this is true, but at least the kind of folklore about it is that if you put dilute milk with water, then the swan can take it into the mouth and somehow separate the milk solids from the rest of the water. In any case, what Atisha is saying is here, the objects of knowledge are many. There are many things that we can study. There are many ways that we can pass our time, but we have to make sure that we're taking the very essence of our human life, make the most of our time, and spend it in a way that's going to be very meaningful. There's another quotation that Lama Zopa Rinpoche recently shared in his ongoing teaching series. So this is in the 37 Practices of Bodhisattvas, a great text that many of you know by Tokme Zangpo. So in that, it is said that even the hearer, listeners, and solitary realizers who only accomplish the benefit for oneself make effort as if they're putting a fire out on their head. So now it is a practice of a bodhisattva for the sake of all the transmigratory beings to apply effort in joyous perseverance, which is the sort of spring or the source of all good qualities. So here it's actually saying, these Shravakas or Prateka Buddhas, who some of you know, are the motivation for their practice is to achieve personal liberation for themselves alone. Okay, But even they who are doing something, even just for themselves, they are making effort as if they're putting out a fire on their own head. Actually, there's a quotation by Arya Nagarjuna where he says that, actually, if our hair were to catch on fire, it would be more appropriate to, instead of putting out the fire, to continue to strive for liberation. So anyway, then if that's the level of effort and sort of hard work that people engaged in gaining just the liberation for one being alone, then you can imagine when we have this aspiration to benefit all sentient beings, and we say we're going to do this, we're going to liberate all sentient beings from the oceans of samsaric suffering, then how much more effort and consistent effort we have to make. So that's my kind of pep talk, right? And in that, as we say, yes, we're trying to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, but in order to do that, we need to accumulate all the causes for achieving enlightenment. And since enlightenment is the effect of various causes, we need to learn about the causes, we need to put them into practice. And so these causes for enlightenment is what we're studying in this course. We are, as it were, learning how to become enlightened. And after we learn about those methods, we're going to put them into practice. So what we're doing is extremely important, extremely meaningful. And, I know that many of you might have work, might have a lot of other family obligations. Nonetheless, I would encourage you to really think about this deeply and think about your motivation for studying. And probably all of us, myself included, we can all find ways that we can more optimize our day. It's not that we have to cut out the family obligations or our work obligations to put more time into studying. But if we're honest, there's probably a lot of time that we're wasting on social media, reading newspapers, doing these other things that aren't adding much value to ourselves or others. So that's the first kind of advice or sort of thing I wanted to bring up. When I read through the answers given, then I know that many of you are relative beginners. I know that many of you have different levels of experience and also a different level of family and other commitments. But one thing that came clear when I was reading it is that some people seems that perhaps they didn't reach the level of understanding that I would have hoped for. And as we mentioned in the beginning, we're now undertaking this multi-year Discovering Buddhism program. And within FPMT circles, then, if one fulfills all the course requirements, that becomes a sort of minimum standard, minimum bar to then teach in the future. So this shouldn't be our goal, but it is a useful kind of benchmark to have when we think, have we mastered the material? Then one easy way, or one way we can think about it, one way we can assess our own progress is to consider whether we know the material well enough that we can teach it to others. And part of why we had the online sort of interviews, part of why we did this self-assessment, well, is for you. And for you to see, these questions that were asked, do you have the knowledge to answer them in a complete way? And in particular, if you were then put in front of a group of other newcomers to Buddhist philosophy, could you explain these concepts that we covered in a way that would garner understanding in the students' minds? So, maybe some of you are thinking, oh, well, no, I'm not going to teach. I don't want to teach. But, if we do want to benefit sentient beings, then, the best way to benefit them is to help them learn these methods that we're learning in our Dharma courses. And, well, I have you think that, we talked about the precious human rebirth and how few, even though there's, 7 billion plus humans in the world, then how many of them actually have the human rebirth? And then how many of them, the precious human rebirth, how many of them have, the time and energy to devote to serious study and practice? So it could be, just think of, say, your graduating class from high school. How many people in your graduating class from high school are engaged in, a long-term, in-depth Dharma study program? Then forget about that. How many in your town? How many in your zip code, right? So it's very rare. And, I'll put it this way. It could be the case, if you study well, that, within your zip code, maybe within your congressional district, that you will have the most sort of knowledge into the Tibetan Buddhist tradition of, anyone in a multi-mile radius of where you live. So think about that. Don't think that, oh, well, there's so many other great teachers out there. I'm not going to teach. Why should I teach when there's, His Holiness Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all these other great teachers out there? I mean, the fact of the matter is, we see this actually in the life story of the Buddha. If you remember, when he was enlightened, he first was silent for 7 weeks, and then afterwards he goes to Varanasi and meets the 5 other disciples that he had been training with before. And then when he gives his first teaching on the Four Noble Truths, those 5 disciples all gain realization. They become Arya beings. Some of them actually achieve the state of nirvana in that very first lecture the Buddha gave. But we see in the Jataka tales that actually those 5 beings, they actually had a relationship with the Buddha in his past lives. And there's a story when the Buddha was a king, those 5 were actually kind of blood and meat-eating spirits. And the Bodhisattva, who was a king at the time, then gave his own blood to those 5 demons, you can say, blood-eating, flesh-eating spirits. And he sort of made a deal saying, okay, instead of killing, the subjects, my subjects, the people in this land, I'll give you my own blood. And then he made this aspiration that in the future, just as I'm giving charity of blood now, may I be able to give the charity of the Dharma to these, 5 in future lives. So, in the Mahayana tradition, there are countless Buddhas who have appeared in the past. There are countless Buddhas who are appearing in the present. And all the various Buddhas have the same qualities in terms of realization. It's not that, some are more enlightened than others. But the difference between the Buddhas is, of course, in the special aspirational prayers that they have and they make while they're still bodhisattvas training in the path. But the other difference is in the amount of disciples they have and who those disciples are. So just as the Shakyamuni Buddha had a special karmic relationship with those 5 disciples that he taught in Varanasi, through having cultivated that relationship in previous lives, all of us, all of you, have special relationships. So, you know, again, the people you graduated high school with, all your co-workers, you know, chances are none of them have met His Holiness the Dalai Lama or Lama Zopa Rinpoche, but they've met you. You are a presence in their life. And so just as when the Buddha Shakyamuni was enlightened, he led then those beings who had a special karmic connection with him, he led those beings to liberation and enlightenment. Similarly, when you're enlightened in the future, there will be a vast number of beings that have a special karmic connection with you and don't have that karmic connection with His Holiness the Dalai Lama or even Shakyamuni Buddha. So I'm saying this so it's a kind of antidote to this thought that, it doesn't have to be me that teaches. It's not that important. Who am I? We need to have a sort of, as Alexander Berzin says in his teachings, when he gives teachings on the precious human rebirth, he talks about, taking our lives seriously. So, we do have this precious human rebirth. It's important what we do. It's important that we, make the best effort towards the goal of enlightenment, because what we're doing isn't just for ourselves, isn't just for our own happiness and well-being, but in a very real way, it's actually for the benefit of all sentient beings. Because once we're enlightened, then, we'll be acting in a spontaneous way, manifesting in whatever form is needed to guide sentient beings in the most effective way to liberation and enlightenment. So, please always sort of keep that in mind. And then, we're talking about this joyous perseverance. When the great Indian master Shantideva talks about it in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, then, in general, we say that, pride is an affliction. But in one sense, we need a certain level of, maybe not calling it pride, but self-confidence, thinking that, okay, I can do this. And Shantideva even goes so far as to say we should be thinking, I alone will do this. Also Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, may I lead all sentient beings to enlightenment, by myself alone, right? So we have to have a kind of, self-confidence, thinking that, yes, I can do this, I will do this, I'll put in effort, these efforts will pay off, and, I'll be able to achieve these higher aspirations that I have. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. It's like a coach during halftime to kind of give a pep talk to the students. So anyway, please keep that in mind. And this practice of joyous effort, actually, it says joyous effort, right? And the essence of it is to actually have a liking towards practicing virtue, okay? And when we have this liking or affinity to practicing virtue, then it becomes, very easy. And how we get this liking toward practicing virtue is to see the benefits of the practices that we're doing, And so here now, the benefits of what we're doing, what can be higher than the achievement of liberation and enlightenment? So the effort we put in now is leading to that very, huge and amazing goal. So of course, we need to keep that in mind and then put in our best efforts. Okay, so I'll leave that for now, and we'll then start with the actual answers to the self-assessment questions.